Welcome everyone. We'll begin with a seated meditation. Sitting and feeling our body, the weight of our body on the floor. Feel our feet, our legs and knees, our butt, our back, kind of straight but not rigid. Notice the sensation in our hands as they rest. Just sitting and noticing, that's all we need to do right now. Bringing attention to the sensation of each in-breath and each out-breath. And when something takes our attention away from the breath, a thought, perhaps another sensation, we notice it. Ah, there it is, and let it go. Come back to the breath. Doing this regularly, we build our concentration. We gain mindfulness, noticing when something else that takes our attention. Building what we might call the letting go muscle. When a thought comes, we recognize it, and then we can let it go, let it pass, and come back to the breath. Notice that all thoughts and sensations come and go. They each have their time. They may come back. But we've always got the breath to come back to. And here we are in week 4. In week 1, we explored explored what is mindfulness, and we worked on the concentration on the breath, meditation. In weeks 2 and 3, we focused on awareness of the body scan, mindful movement, walking meditation, and eating meditation. Today in week 4, we're expanding our mindfulness to noticing particularly our thoughts and emotions as they come and go. Another level. But before we do, I also want to mention that we've decided, since I won't be able to be here next week on the 9th, we're going to have a 2-in-1 class, weeks 5 and 6, on the following week, Thursday the 16th, beginning at 5 p.m. and going perhaps until 6:30, 7 o'clock. So that will be recorded there. Perhaps we can take a few moments to share how our practice is going. Any observations, questions, things we noticed in the book that were particularly helpful. I'm going to go through some of those things tonight that I think bear mentioning. How's your week been?
Pretty good. I find different guided meditations on my phone, so I've been, doing kind of a different variety. I don't listen to the same person all the time, and I've been upping them, trying to find like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So the other night I did do the walking one, and I had my phone in my ear because it was a guided one, and I just, walked the length of my living room to my kitchen, and so it's been helping a lot.
Gotta get some headphones.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yep. So I might have missed some days in there, but then sometimes I make it up. Maybe I'll do 2 in a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do encourage everybody to try to expand it to at least 20 minutes a day. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Really good.
Yeah.
My week hasn't been great. And I've had a lot of heavy emotions come up. And in dealing with them, I haven't meditated at all. I've sat and tried.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been meditating for years, but what I've noticed about myself is that when I need it the most, I don't want to say I can't, but it feels that way. And I get frustrated. And today I was all set up in my spot. I have a spot. It's like a thing. It's a whole ritual. It's just, I can't sit with it, is how it feels.
Yeah.
And it's not like me to not have read by it before today, but today I found myself like, oh, I didn't read, I gotta read. And then I opened it. It's like, man, if I'd only read this days ago, it's exactly what I needed. I mean, and it's just, and then I the things that I say in my classes and things that I teach are all the things I need to hear. And then I get to these lessons on this, what I was reading about rain. And I'm miserable at all of those steps, and then I berate myself. There I was, like criticizing it's like all that non-mindful things that you should do. I've been in it, and I feel like I've been in a little bit of a stew or soup, but I'm confident I'll come out and it's all going to be fine. And it's just interesting to me that my pattern is that when I'm dealing with something, all of the tools I have in my toolbox, I don't dig in there and grab one. I just it's like I want to feel terrible. It sounds, it's like I want to just wallow in whatever emotion I'm feeling. And it's something I really want to work on. And I know this is the key. And I know that it's up here in my head. And so, yeah, this was a good chapter. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it. Help me.
I'll say after I did my meditation, I was doing my meditation in the evenings, like an hour or so before I go to bed. And I was done, and all of a sudden I just started crying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know why I was crying. So, something.
That emotion needed to
Come out.
move.
Yeah, that's really the first time that's really happened.
I had a first with emotions this week as well. I would never say that I was an angry person, but I had anger come up full on to the point where I said to my son, go hang the punching bag for me in the garage. And he said, what? I mean, we got it for them last Christmas and they love it. And he and his dad are out there all the time, like, go hang it for me. And I went out there and I said, now leave. Because he was like, well, I want to do it with you. I'm like, no, leave. And I turned on some really loud music. And I let myself scream and cry and pound like I didn't even know what was inside of me. I just didn't even think about it. I just did it. And it was literally 3 to 5 minutes. And I took off my punching gloves and I walked outside and it was like, okay, all right, And I didn't think like, oh, I didn't, worry too much about whatever anger that was or what it was connected to, the story behind it, or was that okay for me to do what I just did? And yeah, it must have been what I needed because I feel pretty good now. I can't believe I'm sharing that because it's really not my personality, but I grew up with a really angry parent. And so maybe some of that's just suppressed, coming out. Mm-hmm.
Those frustrating times when we feel like we're not meditating can turn out to be the most productive times of all as we reflect on them. And we'll do some of that tonight. And I think even if it feels like we're not meditating, we're not getting anywhere, just sitting with it, just saying, whatever I feel, I'm going to sit here for 15 minutes and just notice it as well as I can. That still counts.
Even if you're telling a lot of stories.
Stories and stories. Yes. Well, as you mentioned, there's several techniques that Sharon mentions in this chapter that are really helpful in dealing with thoughts and emotions, particularly troublesome ones. One of these is called mental noting or naming. As a thought comes, it is helpful to say what it is. That kind of solidifies it as an experience and helps you be mindful. Oh, thinking, you might just say, there's a thought. Or you could say, what kind of thought? Planning. Or remembering, or figuring out, rehearsing. Or you could say a little more specifically, oh, I'm thinking about my daughter's problem again. So mental noting, it's another thought, but it's helpful in pinning down what you're experiencing and then being able to let it go. And I've got a whole list of some examples of the vocabulary that I'm going to share with you later that are helpful in when we're trying to name stuff, because it's good to have certain words that work for us. Now, we can get carried away with mental noting. What exactly is this? And we're trying to say, oh, it's not exactly planning, it's more like figuring out what the next thing is. And no, we don't, not so much. So as soon as we notice we're really trying to pin it down, that's time to let it go. I think time to say, okay, there was a thought. And so often we're so enamored by our thoughts, even if they're unpleasant thoughts, that we really want to stay with them. We really want to, oh, this must be meaningful, and I'm going to stay with this thought. But in our meditation session, we're purposefully, generally, noticing him and letting him go, coming back to the breath. We'll talk about some exceptions to that. Another thing that's good to notice is, what is my mood? Kind of a general feeling about how I am today. Restless, disturbed, quiet, peaceful. I was sitting here waiting for you and I thought, I'm kind of peaceful, but I'm also kind of restless at the same time. And just noticing, oh, that's what my mood is. That's helpful to notice. And more specifically, when we have these thoughts and feelings come up, there's this thing called feeling tone that is valuable. That is, that every thought, every emotion is either pleasant or unpleasant, or sometimes neutral. So the pleasant ones, we notice we like them, and we often want to hold on to those. Oh, that's a good thought. I'm going to stay with this for a while. And as soon as we notice that, we say to ourselves, well, not right now. I can let it go. Or unpleasant thoughts, we usually say, ooh, I don't like that. I want to get rid of it. So we'll try to block it or put it out of our mind. And that's not that effective either. So very often the unpleasant ones kind of grab us and we want to stay with that. And so noticing that it's pleasant or unpleasant is a step in saying to ourselves, oh, I'm realizing what's going on. I can let it go. Neutral thoughts that don't really, and we might say, oh, I'm trying to figure something out. It's not really, doesn't feel that good, doesn't feel that bad. And those kind of thoughts often just kind of bore us and just kind of lull us into this blah. And noticing that. So mental noting, mood, feeling tone, that is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Another thing Sharon talks about are add-ons, where we notice a thought pattern or a thought, and we notice these certain kind of habits we have about that thought. And often they might be blaming ourselves. Why should I have this thought? Oh, it's because of this. Or maybe blaming somebody else. Well, they made me do that. My mother. Or all these kinds of stories, we might say, self-judgment. We might project into the future. Oh, I'm thinking this. I'm probably going to feel like this forever. Or these are all habits that we tend to build, and we begin to realize, I tend to do that. I tend to, a thought comes, and I like it so much, I want to plan the whole scenario around it. And just realizing that that's a habit we have is a step in mindfulness. We say, oh, there's that. And Sharon's very good. She says some of her people have certain names they put on these these habits they have. Well, there's the I never want to go there again mind or whatever. And that's good. So all these things are tools for mindfulness, noticing what's going on. Noticing thoughts and emotions. And probably the most important, I think, tool here is embodiment. They say that every emotion has a corresponding feeling in the body. So particularly, this is helpful with unpleasant emotions. Let's say I'm sad. Oh, I feel sad right now. What is sadness? Where is sadness located? Maybe it's an empty feeling somewhere. Maybe here, maybe in our belly. An empty sadness. And just noticing, this is real. This is not something we're imagining. We can really feel it. And maybe sometimes we don't feel, say, well, I'm excited, but I can't really notice anything in my body. And if we stay with it, oh, excitement, kind of do a little body scan, notice, is it in our hands or our shoulders? So this is really powerful because once we can locate it in the body, several things will tend to happen. Very often, the emotion kind of settles, it kind of subsides. If we can feel it in our body, it may settle. And we say, well, you know, that's true, but I can handle it, and it's kind of goes away, or maybe comes and goes. Or, oh, maybe there's something else behind the sadness. Fear of being alone, maybe. Oh, noticing that, noticing where that feels like in the body. So going through the levels, noticing where it feels in the body, and that's that rain that she talks about. Step 1R, recognize what's going on. Recognize a thought or emotions. Number 2, that's here. I'm going to accept it. I'm not going to push it away. I'm just going to notice it for now. And so sometimes, instead of just letting it go, we decide we want to go to the third step, and that's investigate it a bit. You know, if this thought, if this emotion keeps coming back, and it wants us, perhaps that's a time to stay with it. Notice where it is in the body, and just meditate on what that feeling is, and where it is in the body. Just noticing. Oh, anger. Well, what is anger really? Where is it in the body? Is it a tightness somewhere? And just sitting with it, you may notice that maybe what made us angry, maybe not. Or we may notice certain memories come up with it. Oh, I remember when I got really angry and I had good reason for it. Or maybe we feel guilty. Oh, anger isn't right. That doesn't feel right. And we notice all these levels and just noticing them and feeling them in the body, just staying with it, is really powerful meditation. It is powerful. Coming to those parts of ourselves that we don't like give us the greatest insight. I'm reading a book now by Pema Chodron called Welcoming the Unwelcome. And she talks about in there, I think, a really helpful tidbit. She says, let your nervous system get used to this just for a few minutes and then let it go and come back to it again, because sometimes our nervous system needs to build up a little tolerance to these unpleasant things. So mental noting, naming what we're experiencing, noting what our mood is, feeling tones, noting whether something is positive, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Noting add-on stories we tell ourselves, certain habits that we have about certain thoughts. And embodiment. Some really powerful, helpful skills that we can build. Now it takes years to keep building these skills. And some days are better than others. But keeping up with the practice, we have occasional times where we say, oh, I get it. I kind of get it. And we may notice over time that we settle easier, that we don't react. Or maybe we have these powerful things and we can work through them a little quicker. Some of us are more sensitive than others. And that can be a blessing and a curse, that sensitivity. But if you're willing to go with it and experience those unpleasant things, wisdom builds. And you can share that. I'm not a real sensitive person, I admit. Things kind of, go by me and I don't notice them. So the main skill I work at is mindfulness, trying to notice. But I certainly have had experiences myself where I noticed something unpleasant and I decided to stay with it. I've maybe told you this story before. I was at a retreat online. It was a virtual retreat. And they were doing chanting. And I said, I don't really like this chanting. And I woke up during the night with this anger, like a dream. Chanting? And I said, I think I better get up and meditate on that. So I just sat, noticed what anger was like, noticed my aversion to chanting, and it kind of washed through me. I felt much better. I was able to go back to sleep after a while, and I finally decided I can listen to chanting, but I don't do chanting. So we'll talk about this, but I'd like to try leading us in a little guided meditation on these skills. Now, as I mentioned, as Pema was mentioning, don't go too far into something if it's really challenging, if it's really overwhelming. And we have to know, okay, I'm going to let go of that and I'm going to come back to the breath or come back to some pleasant experience, and we'll do a bit of that in this meditation. You can think of it as if there's something really painful, we are just dipping our foot into the water, just noticing it, and then saying, okay, I'll come back to this. Remember that for these really painful, let's say they're memories of of our past that are so, things come up. Things come up in our dreams or in our meditation or just in our daily life. Some smell or sight, something comes up for us of our past that may be really painful, and we need to say, okay, I notice it, and maybe I'll work on that, but maybe not right now. So if you will, let's just try this. For about 10 minutes or so, maybe 15. Finding a position where we can be comfortable yet alert. Noticing our body and our breath and just settling. Maybe kind of noticing, how do I feel right now? Am I sleepy or awake? Am I calm or restless? Just breathing with that. Noticing when a thought comes by and just saying, oh, thinking, planning, remembering, whatever it is. And coming back to the breath. Now, if you will, please bring to mind an unpleasant experience, feeling, emotion that you have or have had either recently or in the past. Kind of recall the situation. What happened? What did it feel like? Maybe it was sadness, anger, disgust, something that you really didn't like. So this is feeling tone. We notice we have this feeling and it's unpleasant. And name it if we can. Just stay with that. Breathe with it. Try to notice, what is this? We've named it. What does this really mean? What is anger? What is sadness? Whatever it is. Breathing with it. Noticing, where do I feel this in my body? Very often these feelings are experienced as a tightness or a constriction in some area. Notice if we're actually clenching our fists or our jaw. Breathe into that area. Breathe into where we feel it. Does that physical sensation of the emotion change? kind of maybe spread out? Does it lessen? Or maybe it gets worse, just noticing that. Coming back to the naming, what is it? And maybe we notice it's changed. It's got other layers. Just being with it and breathing. After a while, we may notice it's kind of lost its interest. We're not interested in it. It's kind of settled. Well, that was something, but it's kind of not that interesting now. And we can maybe notice, well, this thought, this emotion is temporary. It really doesn't define who I am. It's just something that's passing, as all thoughts and emotions are. And we can let it go. Or maybe we notice it's just a little too intense to explore right now. I can come back to this another time. I'm just going to let it go and come back to the breath. For now, let's just let this go. Let's bring to mind a pleasant event, pleasant thought or emotion that we've had. Perhaps a memory, perhaps something very recent or in the past. Maybe associate a place or a person with that. And name that feeling. We've already said it's pleasant, so is it gladness? Is it peacefulness? Is it excitement? Name it if we can. And then notice what this feels like in the body. Where do we feel it most? What does it feel like in that area of the body? Is it light or heavy? Perhaps there's an opening kind of feeling, kind of a relaxation. Just noticing, what does this pleasant emotion feel like in the body? And just staying with that. Breathing in and out. You may notice this feels so good, I want to hold on to this. I want to feel like this forever. We pretty soon recognize that it doesn't last. All these things fade. That's okay. It allows room for the next thing to happen. Sitting, noticing, and breathing. Let go of that pleasant feeling, that pleasant sensation. You can come back to it another time when we need it. And just noticing each breath. Noticing our body sitting here, the weight. Noticing the sounds around us. Sitting and breathing. Notice how we are now. Would you like to share anything about either this meditation or some of these techniques that we talked about tonight?
I like the pleasant and pleasant neutral.
Having those little tags to put on something helps define it.
Simply. I also like the idea of being able to set something aside.
Yeah. Setting it aside. These are all skills we build with repeated practice. And being persistent with it over the days and months and years, we do get better at it. It takes a lifetime. So making that commitment, keep working on it, is a big part of the practice. We can talk more in a bit. I had one other technique that came to me recently. I don't know if I mentioned this already. Lately I've been counting my thoughts. So I set my timer and I have a chime in the other room. And so when I start my timer, I notice, oh, this chime is going to go off when I have 10 minutes left. So after the chime goes, during the last 10 minutes, I'm going to count my thoughts. For instance, before y'all came in, I said, oh, I've got about 5 minutes. How many thoughts will I have? Well, I had about 4 thoughts in 3 minutes. And I noticed that it's kind of like laying in wait for the next thought to come. And it makes me a lot more conscious of what's coming. And I think I have less thoughts then, because I'm waiting. What's the next thought going to be? Staying with my breath. Oh, there it is. Number 1. So that's been kind of useful to use occasionally.
4 thoughts in 3 minutes.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I know.
It was like 400.
And sometimes I divide them into thoughts that stay for a breath and thoughts that just like that, micro thoughts. I have several handouts for tonight that are, I think, helpful. As I mentioned, these help with building our vocabulary as we're doing this mental noting. So I kind of went through some resources and compiled these.
I got it.
Thank you. About mental noting. And here's a list of common thoughts, emotions, and sensations. And you can add your own list to it. But I thought these, after I did some reading and contemplating, these were some good ones to build on. So some common thoughts are planning, worrying, rehearsing, that is, what I'm going to say to this person.
Oh, okay.
Fantasizing, imagining something in the future, or remembering something that happened in the past. Analyzing, trying to figure out something, judging. So sometimes if we have a thought, we can pin it down with one of those labels. That's helpful. Emotions. Fear is a big one, and lots of times we don't recognize fear. It may be behind something else, like anger, sadness, or happiness. Disgust, surprise, excitement, relief. And we may notice whether it feels pleasant or unpleasant. And sensations. So when we notice a feeling in our body, it's good to have a little bit of names for that. Does it feel heavy or light? Hot or cold? Empty or full? Open or constricted? Tight? Tense, maybe? Pressure feeling? And of course, the common sensations we all know, the 5 senses: hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, and seeing. And here's another list from University of Wisconsin, and I won't read this through with you, but it's called My Favorite Thinking Hits. And these are a few other ones that we may notice. Notice if you're, I think this is very helpful. If you notice if a particular thought is about the past or the future is helpful, because it's not right now, is it?
Mm-hmm.
And one more handout that you can look over in the coming week, and I'm not going to discuss this at all, but I found this is a really valuable little tool. It's just called the pause. And this is about allowing ourselves now and then during the day to stop, pause, breathe, and notice what's happening. Very simple, but helpful. Especially, let's say you're at work and you're having a really busy day. If you notice, oh, I've got a minute, I've got 3 minutes. Well, I can meditate, and this is a nice tool. Just say, oh, I'm just going to pause, notice my breath, notice what's going on. Really valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So for next week, as I mentioned, we're not going to meet in 1 week, we're going to meet in 2 weeks. So you've got a double assignment. Read the rest of the book. The next week 4 in the book is loving kindness. A little bit different. It's not so much being mindful, it's, well, it is being mindful, and we'll explore that. And Sharon Salzberg is one of the probably the experts on loving kindness. She's written several other books just on that topic. And it's really valuable. So we'll explore that next week. And the following week, which will be week 6, which we're going to do also in 2 weeks, is about keeping the practice going. And we will talk about how to keep this going after the class is over. And I'll have some advice about that. And also, we're going to do some stuff on mindful communication, how to listen mindfully and how to speak mindfully. So we'll take time for a longer class and go through both of those important things. I appreciate you being able to schedule it that way. Then the following week is Thanksgiving week, so we'll take a break. And after Thanksgiving, there's going to be 2 more classes that are optional, in which we're going to delve more deeply into what we did tonight. Week 7 would be about being mindful of physical pain. And week 8, emotional pain. So, a friend recently said, Michael, you've been teaching this introduction to meditation for some time. Maybe you should do an advanced class. And I said, well, no, I just do the same class, and I think it's valuable, to keep doing it over and over. But I've been thinking about that. And weeks 7 and 8 are an advanced class. And it kind of spurred me. Barb also encouraged, maybe you should do that. So I am working on a new class, maybe for next fall. It might take me a while to prepare it. I'm thinking it's going to be about mindful aging.
That's good, because I just turned 60 on
Which is, of course, appropriate for any age, but especially a lot of us are in that category. So I'm working on that, probably for next fall.
You could probably do a whole series just on mindful communication.
Yes, that's right.
4 weeks for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll close with meditation, and we'll meet again in 2 weeks. And try to keep up your practice and stay after as long as you like to talk. I used to be able to sit on a cushion with both knees down. I can't do that anymore. In yoga, I put a block under here. But at home, I usually do this kneeling, which is helpful to have our pelvis higher than our knees, to have kind of a solid tripod where we're really planted, and to feel like we can have a kind of a dignified posture, as I like to say. Bringing attention to our body and our breath. Noticing the in-breath and the out-breath. Noticing what takes our attention away from the breath. Sounds, thoughts, Noticing it, letting it go, and coming back to the breath. Maybe get a sense of our mood right now. We're just noticing the breath in and out. Thanks for your practice.
Thank you. Is there a handout from last week?
Yes.
I probably have it from the last time that we were
Right,
here,
that's
but
okay, I have enough.
duplicates.
If you're watching from home and you need a handout, you can email me and I will get it to you. The handout from last week is called Mindfulness Resources. It gives a list of different kinds of things you can find.
Okay.
Books, apps, things like that. Remember that?
Yep.
Thank you for remembering that.
Got a lot of work to do.
We're all invited to attend the Day of the Dead celebrations going on at the library right now.
What's going on?
There's a health fair, you can get immunizations. A lot of different stations they have out there.
Okay.
Maybe that's part of it, Meg, is the veil is thin right now. All these things are streaming in.
And I did just get my second Reiki attunement, and that really opens up the emotional body.
Yeah.
So I feel it. But it sounded like you were playing basketball.